Okay, so hello and welcome to the Virtual Town Hall 2025 for xSTUDIO project. My name is Ted Wayne. I work at DNEG VFX and I'm one of the lead developers on the project. Right, so I imagine most of the people on this call know what xSTUDIO is all about, but I'd like to do a quick overview of the project to set the context for anyone who might be new here. xSTUDIO is a playback and review tool, meaning at the most high level, it's a media player on a lot of steroids. It's designed to run on a regular desktop PC or laptop. We haven't targeted mobile devices like iPads or smartphones. It's designed to be used by individuals and organizations across post-production in general, and particularly VFX and animation. It's cross-platform, so it builds and runs on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux operating systems. It's high performance, by which I mean we've put a lot of work into making it get the most out of whatever hardware you have to hand to load large media sets very quickly, play high resolution, high bit depth image formats, play multiple sources at the same time, and so on and so forth. Fourth, it's hopefully user friendly. We've put a lot of work into the user interface so that it's easy and enjoyable to use without a steep learning curve to get you started. It's configurable, so you can easily change the way xSTUDIO is set up to suit your own workflows or configure it for a group or of team members and so on. And xSTUDIO is highly extendable, so it has Python and C++ APIs that let you take full control of the application to load media, add custom media readers, set up color management, and so on and so forth. So here's what I'm going to talk about today. I mainly want to tell you about xSTUDIO version 1, which just went live on GitHub this week. This version of xSTUDIO is a really big step forwards over the version 0.x series that was previously available on GitHub. Um, we've redesigned and recoded the whole interface. It's now much more flexible and configurable. It has a better look and feel over version 0. We've added multi-track timeline support with an interface that offers editing tools so we can create or load and modify timelines and also import and export thanks to Open Timeline IO integration. xSTUDIO is now fully cross-platform, so we did offer Linux and Windows build instructions on version 0, but building on Windows could still be tricky to get through. We've now got Apple Mac OS build compatibility, and at the same time, the simplicity and the reliability of these build steps is much improved for Windows. We've also done a lot more testing and performance tweaks, and we've ironed out a number of issues that was affecting xSTUDIO on Windows. We have the user documentation has been rewritten to reflect the new interface. We've got loads of new features beside the timeline, like a full set of compare modes, like wipe compare, contact sheet, compositing modes. There are new graphics overlays in the viewport, like a configurable metadata overlay, status overlays, a grading tool with mask shapes. And a lot of the xSTUDIO core has been refactored and improved as part of this overhaul. So I'm going to do a quick recap of the project history to finally set the scene. So xSTUDIO started as a DNEG internal project to improve our playback and review capability in early 2020. And during that year, we started attending the ASWF working group meetings on review, which would later result in the founding of the OpenRV initiative. And by mid 2021, we'd started testing an alpha version. And then a further 12 months or so of development, we had a product that was suitable to roll out to DNEG's global crew. And around this time, mid 2022, we also announced that we would open source the project with the sponsorship of the ASWF. And then we published the code in January 2023. And then during that years, we focused on extending pipeline integration of xSTUDIO at DNEG. We had a great contribution from the community where Michael Kessler at Epic Games delivered Windows build compatibility. But that lived on a separate branch for quite a while before it was merged last year. Around mid 2023, we started working on version 1 as we did some major refactoring to support multi-track timeline features and the redesign of the interface. And then after another year and a bit of work, we rolled out version 1 in October last year. That's rolled out to DNEG internal user base. And as we've continued improving version 1 based on feedback from DNEG's user base, which by the way is about 5,000 up to 5,000 daily users, the build compatibility for Mac OS and Windows has improved. Documentation API examples have been added in until we finally felt that the code base was suitable for merging into the main branch on GitHub. So something I want to address is the relative lack of apparent activity on the open source project from about mid 2023 3 until now. Apart from Epic's contribution that was merged last summer, there wasn't a lot of activity on GitHub. Over most of this period, we were working furiously on the version 1 improvements, and this work was really important for our employers, DNEG. So we have a very small team, so we struggled to afford the time to maintain the public repo as well as we had intended. And then as version 1 was rolled out at DNEG at the end of last year, we entered another very busy development phase as we added new features and improvements to version 1 in response to a huge amount of really good feedback from the DNEG crew on this new version. And we didn't want to publish the code for version 1 on GitHub until the build compatibility problems were fixed and until the documentation had been updated. But the good news is that we're now catching up with ourselves. Version 1 is now available on GitHub, and we should be able to sync between our DNEG internal repo and GitHub more frequently. We can also start to address the issues raised on GitHub, which have unfortunately not been attended to at all, just purely to a lack of manpower over this period. So now let's get a look at version 1. So that I've got a few screen recordings that I want to share with you. I'm not going to do a full walkthrough of the application as we don't have enough time for that. So consider these demos just a few focused highlights. So let's have a look at the interface. When version 0 was rolled out at DNEG, a lot of users asked about refactoring and reconfiguring the interface, but of course they all wanted something different. So the obvious solution here was to make the interface completely flexible so that the user can set it up the way that they like. If you can't hear audio, because this is a recording where I've done a monologue over the top, just please somebody shout out and I'll try and, but you should get the audio coming through.
Hi, so I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of xSTUDIO version 1's new UI. The first thing to note is that with this UI we have multiple layouts which are accessed through these buttons here. So I've got my timeline layout, review, and present. The present layout is a single viewport. I can hide the UI elements so that it fills the window or fills the screen. I can switch between these with hotkeys as well, and hit the tab key to switch in and out of present mode. You'll see that each of these layouts is built by subdividing the window. So each subdivision we call a panel, and they can be scaled by dragging these gutters that separate them. And then each panel has a tab, and that lets you set what is in the panel. So I can go from timeline to grading tools. I can add notes. I can have a Python interface. I can have a timeline, and then it's quick and easy to switch between those. If you don't want to use the tab feature, you can hide the tabs through this menu, and that cleans up the interface and gives you back a fair bit of real estate. If I show my tabs again, we can also create custom layouts. So we hit this menu here, hit new layout, and we start off with a viewport filling the window, and then through this menu here I can start splitting the panels, and then I can have whatever layout that I like. So it's really flexible and fully configurable. You can even have multiple viewports in one interface, which is probably of quite limited usefulness, but it shows the flexibility of this system. We also have a pop-out viewport to support dual screen setups, so you could have no viewport in the main interface, just have your timeline, media and playlists for example, and have the viewport in this pop-out window on your second screen. So hopefully there's enough flexibility there to meet all of the requirements of any user, and they can completely set up the interface to suit their own needs and their workflows.
Okay, so this one is a kind of a quick start demo where I'll show importing media and creating a timeline.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is a kind of quick start guides to xSTUDIO version 1. I'm going to take you through a few of the headline features, some of the core functionality, most of which is new in this version of xSTUDIO. So I'll start the app. Starts up nice and fast. what I've got here is a folder. It's got over 1,200 clips in. They're H.264 QuickTimes. I'm going to drag and drop this into the playlist panel. Just watch how fast it can do this. So when I drop that in, it creates a playlist. This number's telling me the number of clips imported, and it's finished. So that took 3 or 4 seconds to load 1,200 clips. I can just click on that and start viewing, and they're all there, ready to be played through and viewed. Within this folder there are subfolders. It's created underneath the playlist these subsets, which are named according to the subfolders in this top level folder. So that's another feature of the drag drop mechanism. It will create subsets for subfolders, but it only goes one level deep. So let's have a look at creating a timeline. If I right click in the playlist menu, I can add a new sequence. Double click on that and we can go to the timeline panel, and you can see we've got an empty video track, empty audio track. So now I can go to other subsets or other playlists, select some media, drag and drop it into the video track, and then we're up and running. We've got the timeline starting to be built. I can add new video tracks, just start using the tools to move clips around, trim them, roll them, and so on and so forth. So it's really quick and easy to get started and building a timeline. Of course, you can build timelines through the API, and you can also import and export using OpenTimeline.io. So there are various ways to construct timelines in xSTUDIO to start editing or viewing them. Another feature that I want to show you is the notes system. So we can just create notes through this panel, enter text into this box, and then of course we've got drawovers and text. The text can be repositioned and edited after it's been created. You can scale the text size and so on. This was in xSTUDIO version 0, I should say. This bit isn't new. We can also create a grading note, so I can start messing with the grade on this clip, or I can also add a new grading layer and use the polygon tool or the ellipse tool to to create a mask to push the grading through, and then that will get rendered into my note here. And then another thing I want to show you quickly is the color management. So in xSTUDIO's preferences system, you can go to this color management panel. You can drive OCIO through the OCIO environment variable, or you can select a default OCIO config, or you can pick an OCIO config from disk. And there are other ways of driving the color management through the API, where you can add metadata to media when it's instanced in xSTUDIO, and that will trigger the loading of particular OCIO profiles, configs I should say. So by default, xSTUDIO ships with the two ACES OCIO configs, and then an xSTUDIO one that extends the features of the ACES configs. You can right click, you can go into the OCIO menu and then set the source color space, and then of course we've got the usual display and view settings. So out of the box you get some level of color management through the ACES OCIO configs, but you can fully customize it and use OCIO in the regular kind of environment variable control ways, and also through the API.
Okay, full disclosure, I recorded these demos on an M4 MacBook, which is obviously a really powerful machine. and it's got a lightning fast file system. So the performance of the media loading that you saw is obviously a function of the hardware that you have. But we've done a lot of work optimizing the media load times, and you should get really good performance whatever hardware you're running on. Unless it's a Raspberry Pi. I haven't tried it on that, but who knows? But yeah, there's a lot of work's gone into the optimization of media loading. So this clip is going to show the timeline as part of a pipeline integration. Just to demo it, this is showing some of DNEG's pipeline integration, which isn't really part of the public product. The code is actually in the repo, but it's only sort of set up for DNEG's infrastructure. But let's have a look anyway.
Okay, so now I'm going to show how xStudio's timeline features can work with pipeline integration. So I'm going to load up DNEG's shot browser tool. This is our front end for ShotGrid and DNEG's IV asset tracking database. I'm loading data from a show that is still running, so I've had to pixelate out all of the images. It's the only way to really show this in action. And what I've got here on the left are all the sequences from this show in a tree view, and then the shots under the sequence. So I'm going to select a sequence, and I've selected approved turnover cuts, and it's showing me the current approved turnover cut. So this is an OTIO file that DNEG's editorial department have published. So if I double click that, it will load into xSTUDIO, and then if I double click the sequence object, here's the timeline. So this is the sequence OTIO file loaded into xSTUDIO. We've got all the shots in the sequence, and what I can do now is I can hit plus to add a video track, and then right click on this, and then in the right click context menu I've got various menu options that the shot browser plugin has injected into xStudio's menu system. And I've got this auto-conform submenu, and I've got a load of options to auto-conform into the timeline. So if I was to select one of these, like for example comp latest, what it'll do is it'll loop over the shots in the timeline in the video track underneath, and it will use metadata on the clips in that video track to drive a search into ShotGrid and Ivy to return the latest comp renders. So if I hit that, you can see it just takes a second to load all of the latest comps into the timeline. Yeah, I'm sorry that we only have pixelated images. It just takes away from the effect of this. So but really it's about how quick and easy it is to do an autoconform in this with this sort of integration. So I can just right click, autoconform. Let's load the latest layout, and let's load into another track. We'll load the scans. And again, it just takes a few seconds, or a couple of seconds. And now I could perhaps go to compare mode. This will show my 4 tracks in the grid layout. So here I've got scan, comp, layout, and the edit reference laid out in a grid, and ready for playback. Oops. So that's just a tiny little taste of what can be done with some pipeline integration driving the timeline in xSTUDIO.
Okay, next up, I've got a screen capture which walks us through the new compare mode system that's in version 1 of xSTUDIO.
Okay, let's have a quick look at the new compare modes that were in xSTUDIO version 1. Previously on version 0, the compare modes were quite limited, and we had just an A/B string and off compare modes. So here I've got a playlist or a subset playlist with 10 bits of media in. If I select all 10, I'm in compare mode A/B. Now if I hit the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 keys, I can cycle through those videos. I can start playing back and cycling through those, and the frame numbers are lined up in each clip. They are slightly different lengths, which is why you can see this orange bar. That's where it's holding the frame for clips that are shorter than the longest clip in the selection. So you'd normally do this when comparing different versions of the same shot, but I don't really have good media to demonstrate that, so we're just going to use these clips. So now when I hit the compare button in the toolbar, I can go to string mode, and now it's just stringing all those clips together, so they'll play through in sequence. And I can also, let's say, go to grid mode, and now they're laid out in a grid. Contact sheet. I can also choose a horizontal arrangement. It's not that useful when you've got 10 clips. Let's just select 4. Or vertical. I can also go to a picture-in-picture mode. So I've got clips in each corner. And then we also have these composite modes. So I've got a wipe compare here. Obviously I can play and use this at the same time, and then again those keys 1, 2, 3, 4 will select which 2 clips are being wiped between. We can also do a screen, so now they're all being composited, or an add. If you want to go really crazy, there's an A/B difference which can be quite useful when comparing similar renders, looking for those differences. So it takes the difference and then makes a luminance image of it, and so on and so forth. And we can also create a contact sheet object. So let's say I want to compare these 4 images. So at the moment the grid mode is dynamically built, so if I select these 6 clips, then that's what get laid out. Select 1 clip, and so as I add more clips into the selection, it adds them into that dynamic grid layout. But I can select the images, right click, and then do add media to a new contact sheet. The contact sheet object, it applies the compare mode, but it's statically applied to all of the media within the contact sheet object. So now I'm in grid mode, and the selection doesn't change the that layout. So that's how that works, and the ordering of the layout reflects the ordering in the playlist. So if I move this clip to number 1, it all gets reordered, and that clip's up there in the top left. You can actually go into grid mode and adjust some settings. We could make this a picture-in-picture like this, and then that will statically lay that out in that contact sheet object within the session.
Okay, and this is the last screen capture. It's a walkthrough of the head-up display features that are new in version 0.
Hi there. I'm going to quickly show a new feature in xSTUDIO version 1, which is the HUD, the head-up display, which is various overlay graphics options that we have. It's accessible via this button here in the toolbar. So when I click on that, I get a list of the current HUD plugins. All of these are implemented as plugins. Some of them are pretty simple. So an example is Media Dot. What that does is it, excuse me, it will put the flag color of the media on screen. So I can click here and I can give this bit of media a flag color, and then I get this dot on the screen. It seems really basic, but some supervisors have said it's one of the most useful things in xSTUDIO. And they basically use these flag colors just to flag to themselves the status of certain media that they're reviewing. So when they come to do the review, they can see on screen the color they've assigned to it. Another one is field charts. What this overlay lets you load SVG images, so you can add more images, overlay field chart images, and toggle them on and off through this interface. You can change the opacity and so on, but you can actually add whatever SVG you like to be fitted over the image like that. We've got an audio waveform, which has got a few settings to scale it down a bit. Look at the stereo channels. One that's worth having a bit of a closer look at is media metadata. So this is fully configurable, and what this does is it picks metadata fields from the media, and then you can lay it out on the screen over the image. So I've got a test. You can have multiple different profiles as well. So my test profile here, I hit the cog to edit the profile. Then I've got tabs for metadata. So this pipeline metadata is at the top level media item, and because I'm not working in the DNEG network, there's no pipeline metadata on this media. But if I go to media metadata, then we can see the fields that have come from FFmpeg when the media was scanned. So if I check this box, then that metadata field will appear on screen. And likewise, we've got frame metadata, which is more interesting generally with EXRs, because EXRs have got the header data that's per frame. And then in layout, I can decide where each of the key value pairs appears, and I can also set the title for it. So let's say this one, data window, I'll move that to top right, like that. And then there's other options for scaling the text, setting its opacity, color, the spacing of the text, and so on, and the inset. So let's go to look at some EXRs. So now I'm picking the EXR data window field, and that's animated per frame, so that shows the frame-based metadata is making its way through onto the on-screen display.
Okay, that's the end of the screen captures. So let's talk a bit about where we are at with cross-platform support and building xSTUDIO, because that's a very hot topic and crucial to accessibility to people out there in the community. So as I said at the beginning, we're now probably cross-platform, and it's pretty easy to build xSTUDIO on all platforms. With Mac and Windows, you need to get the developer tools installed yourself, and then it's just a case of running a handful of commands in a terminal or a PowerShell. The next obvious step for us is to make a single build script that simplifies that even further. The way we've done this on Mac and Windows is to use Microsoft VC Package to build the dependencies, and we think this is a pretty neat solution in many ways. So when you follow our build instructions on Windows, what you get now is an installer.exe file that will correctly install xSTUDIO so that it appears in your applications list in the start menu. And on Mac OS, you'll get a .app application bundle that you can copy around like any other app. Linux is a bit more of an issue though, as of course there are many Linux flavors with various competing ways that packages or application bundles are built and distributed or installed. And it's probably not a realistic goal that we can fully support, a lot of those. Up to now, we've been working on the basis that Linux users are already probably fairly technical and familiar with building tools from source code, or that they're working in an organization like a VFX Studio that generally has dedicated teams with expertise in software build and deployment. But with all that said, it is still pretty easy to build and install xSTUDIO on Linux. But with our current instructions, the dependencies are going to get put into the system installation folders, which it might not be desirable. So what I want to investigate in the coming month or two is using Docker scripts to build xSTUDIO, and then we install xSTUDIO out of the Docker environment onto the host file system in an inverted commas a clean way, where xSTUDIO's dependencies don't end up polluting the system installation. So basically watch this space. I think we're nearly there. It's certainly an awful lot easier to build xSTUDIO than it was, but we could still make it a lot better. Let's talk a bit about the APIs. These have been expanded a great deal. You can basically do almost anything conceivable within xStudio by writing plugins. It's worth noting that a lot of the existing features in xStudio are implemented as plugins. So one example is the annotation drawer over tool. That's overlay graphics plugin. All those HUD plugin features I showed you were plugins. Um, the APIs provide base classes for certain types of plugins. So there's a viewport layout plugin which you can use to put multiple image streams on the screen with your own transform or completely take over rendering them. All of the compare modes you saw are implemented through the viewport layout plugins. Um, there's a video output plugin class. This makes it really easy to create an off-screen viewport and capture frame buffers from it, and this could drive video output cards like Blackmagic or Arja SDI cards, or for rendering timelines to video files through FFmpeg. We've already got a Blackmagic SDI plugin, which is going to get added to the repo soon, and a rendering plugin is also in development. There's an overlay graphics plugin class. This makes it easy to do things like the field chart overlay or metadata display that was just demoed. Then we have data source plugins, which are how you would integrate xStudio into your pipeline. Um, So we're still working on some good demos and documentation that showcase these API features, and that will make it easier to get started on plugin development. But as I say, there are many plugins that ship with xStudio already, and these implementations should hopefully serve as a good reference for anyone who wants to write their own plugins. The one that's going to be most valuable is a data source plugin that provides integration with ShotGrid and a vanilla ShotGrid instance. And at some point, I hope we can address that. So here's what we're thinking of concentrating on over the coming months. One thing that keeps me awake at night is that there are many GitHub issues open, and we just haven't been able to address these or even communicate with the people that originated them while we were working on the version 1 redesign. So I think the majority of those issues have been addressed with version 1, especially the improvements in building the ease of building xStudio. So we'll be able to close off a lot of those hopefully over the coming weeks. Um, the code base of version 1 is now finally synced with our internal repo, so we have caught up with ourselves, as it were. This means we can now do regular releases more or less in sync with the releases that are happening at DNEG. Now that version 1 is out, I think we can start monthly steering committee meetings on the xStudio project. So anyone out there in the community who's either using xStudio or looking to contribute to the development will have a chance to get involved and engage with us directly. In terms of development, the things that we're working on, we've got some big improvements still in the pipeline. Um, as I said, we already have a Blackmagic SDI card plugin. We've been using xStudio outputting over SDI in most of our screening rooms at DNEG for about 18 months using this plugin. So it's thoroughly battle tested. And on a decent system, we can run 4K, 60 frames a second, 12 bits per channel. Works no problem. Maybe higher, but we haven't tested that. So that'll be added to the repo at some point in the reasonably near future. xStudio still lacks a way to render out QuickTime and MP4s and what have you, which is kind of going to be a requirement to make the most use out of the timeline features. But this is already in development, and we'll be putting that out in a couple of months as well, I should think. We're working on an exciting project where we're broadcasting live video from direct out of xStudio that can be received in a web browser. That's in fairly early stages though. Um, I've been talking about this for a couple of years and we haven't been able to do anything due to resource constraints, but I still think a vanilla ShotGrid integration would be really valuable for the community and help smaller studios adopt xStudio for playback and review. So you never know, you might get a chance to do this, but of course, even better, maybe somebody in the community could take this on. And as I said, although the build steps are much more user-friendly, there's still more that could be done, especially for Linux distros. And another thing that we're hoping to sort out are CI builds with unit tests to do some automated validation of PRs. So if you want to get involved, here's what you can do. Rather obviously, pull the code, follow the build instructions, and give it a try. xStudio, it's still quite new. There's been a lot of interest out there, but I think it's fair to say, people have wanted to wait and see where it's going before they committed time and resources into adopting it in their respective studios, which is quite understandable. But I think we're now at a point where it's maturing. This version's been in production at DNEG for a good while. It's battle hardened, it's fully featured. So if you've been thinking about looking more closely at xSTUDIO, but you've held off until now, I think it's a good time to start checking it out. Keep an eye out for notifications from the ORI about the xSTUDIO Technical Steering Committee meetings when they start up, or they will appear, I think, on the ASWF calendar when they're sort of scheduled. You can talk to me directly and many other community members on the ORI xSTUDIO discussion channel on Slack. I do check in regularly and respond to questions as quickly as I can. But please note that I'm going on leave for 2 weeks after today, so it'll be quiet from my side until later in the month. So sorry if you have any questions right now, but I will be back quite soon. Um, and of course, please do submit PRs. We'd love to have more contributors involved with the project. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for joining me. There's a QA section.
I can read them for you, Ted, if you
Oh,
want.
thank you. Yeah, I just
Yep.
can't quite find the interface for that.
So under the hood, is there a limit to the size of the contact sheets? We sometimes get a little vertically crazy.
Um, it depends on your hardware. So I've done it up to on my I've got an M4 Mac, and I think I've had it playing back at 24 frames a second with about 40 bits of media on the screen at once. Something similar on a workstation I've tried out. Obviously, it's hardware dependent, but like I keep saying, we've tried to optimize things as much as possible. So hopefully, we're squeezing every bit of juice out of your hardware. But yeah, if you've got a decent machine, it can go pretty high.
Does that answer your question, Gates? It was a question by Gates.
Yeah, thanks very much. So we sort of like use contact sheets with still images or first, middle, last, and then we may have thousands vertically, but it's not necessarily about playing the media. It's more about like visually navigating the media.
Oh, I see. Thousands. So thousands. Yeah, it's not, it's more intended for kind of video playback.
Yeah, so like a
So you're talking about,
tiled playback.
yeah. So you're talking about like a sort of a desktop to view a large group of images.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then we load the individual loops from there, but um no, it was just a question because we've had I think if we were going to adopt this, we would also want to be able to have like I guess maximum vertical image resolution. I was wondering if like we were going to have any tiling issues with that. So initially I was like, oh, maybe we could use the contact sheet, but I think the question switches to what's the maximum vertical resolution you can support in xStudio
For a single frame, do
for
you
a
mean?
single frame.
Oh, it's probably currently it's limited to the maximum texture size. So I think
And there's no tiling built into it right now.
not at the moment, no.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that is kind of somewhere further down the roadmap. We want to support super large EXRs, tiled EXRs.
Yeah,
Um,
that's one of our gotchas. We use it pretty heavily.
yeah, yeah, we're aware of that problem, and we certainly want to implement that. Got some plans to do that.
Cool.
Um,
This looks wonderful. Thanks for sharing.
oh, thank you. You're welcome.
And
My
Gates said the
second
second.
question.
Right. Your second. How about you go ahead and do it?
I can ask it, David. Thanks.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the other question was just about copying and pasting from the media metadata in the metadata picker. Like, is there a way of just selecting the text and copying it out? I would imagine on the display not, but maybe in the widget.
Yes, you're right. You can't cut and paste the displays OpenGL, but the widget. Yeah, I think it might not be enabled, but it's somebody at DNEG has asked about that as well. I think we've got a ticket in the queue. So yeah, if it's not already possible, then it will be, because those are kind of regular text items in the GUI layout. So you should be able to just select text from there and copy to the clipboard.
Great. Thanks again.
No props.
Another question came up from Stefan. Will there be a way to switch representations of clips, for example, high-res EXR and a JPEG or a QuickTime proxy?
Yes, that is already built into xSTUDIO. It's been there from very early on. So we have media items, and within media items you have media sources, which represent the artifact on disk. So we use this heavily at DNEG. So when we load media through our pipeline tool, you have on the bottom right of the toolbar, there's a source button, and when you click on that, you can see the different proxy resolutions of the EXR. We've got a review proxy QuickTime, like a higher bitrate ProRes QuickTime, and then DNX HD encoding. So we've got various encodings, and they're all switchable through that interface. There's some other places you can switch them as well. So yeah, it does. We do support that. That's built in. Although you need some pipeline smarts to actually kind of build the compound media items. If you're just using the sort of vanilla app when you're dumping media out of the file system, you won't get that feature. But you just need to do a little bit of Python scripting to be able to build compound media items.
Thanks. That sounds very useful, and it's no problem to do it ourselves in Python. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. You're welcome.
No more questions in the question pane.
Oh, I just dropped one in. Says a follow-up to the last one.
All right.
If you're using OpenTimeline.io has a multiple media reference feature where you're going to have more than one media reference attached to a clip, will that map into multiple sources in xSTUDIO?
I don't actually know. I don't think I've tested that. My colleague Al wrote the .io interchange stuff. I imagine he would have put that in. If he didn't, we definitely can, because yeah, as I say, it's a core part of the xStudio's design, so we could certainly do that. So yeah, it's something for us to look into. If it doesn't already do that, then it should, and we'll make sure it does.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Okay, I think
Another
we're all
one.
done.
Another one just came in from Hazel. Is it okay to attempt a PR to upload build artifacts as temporary automated public builds, or are there legal implication concerns?
Yeah, this is a good question. So this is an ongoing problem that we've been discussing for some time. Yeah, it's to do with distributing the FFmpeg binaries and the legal ramifications around that. That's what the ORI group, the wider group, is kind of investigating. We're making some progress. We've got some ideas about whether we can switch off some features in FFmpeg and enable us to distribute binaries. Or for example, on Mac OS, exclusively use the video toolbox for decoding, which would then mean we wouldn't rely on FFmpeg. But yeah, for now, we are unfortunately unable to make binaries available through that mechanism.
And that seems to be the last question. If there's no other questions from the group.
Okay, well, thank you again for attending.